To me, the best releases of the year came from Rolex. Obviously, everybody was waiting for Rolex. They kept us hanging through the summer. But when they did do it, it was a big release. My favorite is the new Submariner Collection. And specifically the white gold with the blue bezel. I don't have it here on the table. We do own one only in Hong Kong, and they're not giving it up. No. Because that's been the rarest of the new introductions, but it's amazing. The new design, 41 millimeters, everybody's like, oh, why would they go bigger? It's thinner, it wears amazingly well.
Actually, we're smaller than the 40.
It definitely looks smaller than the 40. I don't know where they measured it from. But I really think that the attention to detail and everything they did on the smallest ways made that watch, which is truly, to me, one of the most iconic, most popular watches ever made, they made it better, which is super hard to do. So to me, that was my best pick of the year. And I can't wait. I love white gold sport watches anyways, because I love the weight.
No, I mean, you know, it's a shame that they didn't have the shows. You know, I almost feel like I started taking them for granted. You know, to where like, they don't really need to do these anymore. Like, you know, let's go digital. Like, let's move towards the future.
It's not the same.
And now, you know, with all the digital releases, I'm like, you know, I miss going to Basel World. I miss the energy that comes from being there with other people from the industry and the brands and seeing everything at once. So, you know, there's, you know, it's a little bit bittersweet almost.
Yeah, exactly. But it was nice having this spread out because you did get spend a little more time with them. Like certain brands would have gotten overlooked, I think, if it was at Basel, but because they had their week or 2 weeks of release time, they got some more attention to it.
No, for sure. What about you, Q?
Yeah, I mean, I miss Tim just going over there and editing videos same day. You know, like you record your video and then that night, you know, there's a video. So by next time you guys morning, you got a full selection before anybody else, by the way. For me, my best watch of the year would have to be the Acatron Space View, which is an interesting pick because it's not, you know, Acatron and Bover are not brands that we talk about much here. But basically what happened is Acatron is now its own brand. Citizen Group kind of spinned it out, and they made the Space View. And the Space View uses electrostatic technology to power the movements. So it's a hybrid mechanical, hybrid quartz. But why it's my pick for the best year of the best watch of the year is it's pushing forward. Nobody asked for it. Nobody was looking for a different Acatron. Nobody, you know, nobody cared. Maybe the one or two guys out there who are like, yes, you know. But when they released it, the size is great. The look of the watches are really nice because they have that really nice exposed circuit board movement look to them. And the technology is just really, really amazing. It's just a nice way to see that they're still pushing forward. Price point at $3,000, I think is good for what you're getting there as well. And it's just nice to see a brand that you weren't thinking about, you know, come out with something that's really kind of revolutionary in its own little world of the watchmaking industry. We're very mechanically focused here, so we don't talk about quartz watches too often, but it's nice to see that still in that realm of watchmaking, things are still being pushing forward. I'm very excited to see what they do with Acatron models in the future and different dials. And
it's the sort of watch that I don't think competes with any other watch in a collection.
Exactly.
So it stands on its own. It's the kind of watch that fits honestly into any collection. The Acatron has a really cool place in watchmaking history. And for me, it always had that steampunky kind of vibe to it where with the mechanics and everything showing, it just has a really cool look and feel.
Yeah.
So,
I love this. It's funny because I grew up with Acatron.
Yeah.
I mean, before they were quartz, the Acatron was like the hip, cool thing because it would hum. I mean, the old tuning forks, I mean, they literally would hum and they were like much more accurate than mechanicals. Pre-quartz, that was like the cool thing. And obviously the Space View with the open dial was the coolest one to have with the crystals. You could never fix them. They didn't work that great. They were a little quirky. But they
got tired of using the grandfather clock.
Exactly. They were awesome. So, I mean, I got excited about that too. I think it's funny that it relates because you probably didn't even know Space Views back in the day.
No, you know, and of course I see it
time,
in you know, magazines and stuff. I was very fortunate. A good friend of mine works for a Citizen Group, so I got to tour their Empire State Building facility, and every brand has like a mini museum. So you go inside the Bulver room, and there was an older Acatron there, and all the news clippings and things of that time, and it really like transported you back to an era. So to me, it was very interesting that they created a whole new watch and just didn't do another both Acatron, just a reimagining. They just kind of created a whole new watch using the Acatron name and the space used styling, but it's a completely new thing. I just thought that was very interesting because the Acatron itself is a cash cow, but they chose to do something a little bit of experiment. And again, no fear, and I really love brands that are living without fear right now.
So for my new release of the year is the Moser Streamliner, coming in at 40 millimeters with a green fume dial. This is Moser's first integrated bracelet sports watch. And just
Funny, they made it blue.
It's wrapped nicely.
Just give you a hard time.
And you know what? I think that it's rare when you see, I shouldn't say it's rare to see an integrated steel sports watch because it's all the rage now. And it's probably the most popular watches from the most popular brands. But I would say that it is very hard nowadays to come out with a new and intriguing integrated steel sports watch. And for me, Moser makes around 1,500 watches a year. They've got a crazy high level of technical movement prowess. You know, you see that in the tourbillon that they produced for MB&F in their recent collaboration,
Amazing
which again
watch.
was an unbelievable 2020 release. But for me, this is a watch that any watch lover should be looking at, not just as a replacement for a Nautilus or a Royal Oak, but a watch that fits in a collection its own way. And they could have gone with a blue dial.
As everybody else has.
And everybody else did. And they didn't. They went with a color that's unique to them. And for me, the watch itself is just a showstopper. I mean, it fits incredibly well. The movement is gorgeous. Rose gold rotor. The bracelet is super unique. It fits super comfortable. And again, it was a game changer for the brand and a pivotal moment for the brand. And to me, you're always a little nervous when a brand is going to launch a steel integrated sports watch because you're like, is it going to miss? Is it going to not? You know, we've seen brands that it's missed on. Yep. And for me, they hit it out of the park.
Yeah, I think the important factor there is just it's so unique and individual to Moser. I think making a sports watch right now is just like making a dress shirt or making a pair of jeans. Everybody in the world does it. So if you do it, it has to be you. Mm-hmm. You know, like it has to speak. And they could have made a blue dial and it would have sold very, very well. But then it just ended up in that beautiful meme that you see of all the blue dial sports watches that get made. So I love that even when they did the Chrono limited edition, they didn't make that blue. This in green is perfect. What I love about this as well is the hands, those nice big loom pieces on the hands as well. So it's actually very usable in a lot of different situations. And it's just an individual piece. There's so many sports watches that look the same. And like, it just like, for me, experiment, have fun. There's these brands that have all these money into them, and like a brand like Moser, it's like sports watches isn't gonna be their thing, right? Like we love the sports watch, but I don't think they'll ever make 60% of their production sports watches. So it's nice that they made something that they know isn't gonna be the largest amount of their production, but didn't just make it a blue dial, easy sell, blah, blah. They're like, no, we're gonna make it Moser, they're gonna make it us. I think that green dial is perfect, and I'm excited to see what other dials they do in the future. I think they'll add some variety there and not just be a one-trick pony for sure.
No, for sure. And you know, again, it's not a round watch, which, you know, it's got this cushion shape, so unique in that regard as well. You know, it's not like they just threw a bracelet on another one of their pieces and said, okay, this is going to be our integrated sports watch. They came out with something entirely different. Screw down crown, you know, 120 meters water resistant. So this is a watch that can be a daily wear. And I think that fast forward, you know, 5 to 10 years, you know, this will be a flagship line within the Moser family. Ultimately, I think is going to change the destiny of the brand. I think that you're going to see a lot of watch collectors coming around and looking for unique and interesting things. I think you're going to see a lot of buyers in other markets that want to sort of start moving more into the, call it, independents that hold their value.
Right.
Because let's face it, you know, there's something nice about being able to buy a watch where they're making 60 to 80 of a year. You know, you don't need to you're not worried, you know, you're not thinking like, wow, they're making thousands of these, or it's, you know, a limited edition Omega to 7,000 pieces.
Right, and everyone's gonna have one. All my friends will have the same watch. I think I love that fact. And it's funny because my second pick for my watch of the year was the Streamliner Chrono. And I love it because the movement, I've always been a chrono junkie. Since I was a kid, my first watch was a chrono. But I don't know if you've ever spent any time on the back of that chrono, but the rotor is actually underneath the plate. So you literally see the open work. It looks like an open movement, but it's an automatic, which to me is incredible because a lot of the classic chronographs are manual. I still love an automatic watch, but there's something about it. It's the best of both worlds. And you would have thought somebody would have done it before. You know what I mean? In all the years everything's happened, and for them to come out with their, kind of first signature sport chrono, and to have that movement at that level, it's an amazing piece. And again, super rare. I'm sure it's sold out, long gone by now.
Why hasn't somebody thought of that? I mean, it seems like it's pretty genius.
It was ingenious, but I mean, nobody thought about burying a rotor.
Yeah.
And it was great, and that's what it kind of set me off to. That's really what got my interest in the brand. I mean, I'd seen them, and I liked the colors, and I knew the story, so I liked the fact that they were doing it. It's kind of like not the tiny brands, but it's certainly not a major. I mean, producing 1,500 watches a year is kind of at that level where, it's a mainstream brand, but it's still fairly unknown unless you're into this. Yeah, and I love that watch. And I think to your point, I think the Streamliner is going to change that projecting of the movement of the whole brand. I think it's going to change now.
A lot of times we see within the watch industry when one brand does something and it's successful, and then you see like the next year another brand or two brands do it, and then next thing you know, it's like you're like like bronze.
Bronze.
Like,
everybody had to do bronze.
There was a few years where like every brand had a bronze watch. The fume dial or that treatment or the gradient of the colors, started with them. Or not necessarily started with them, but they popularized it.
They popularized it. I think back to the old Rolexes of the 80s that, had those dials that were cool. But nobody had really done it for decades.
For a long time.
Yeah.
And you see other brands doing it now as well. So, again, just a brand that I think, I'm excited about, and we're all excited about, and I think we're going to see a lot of cool things coming from them.
It's going to be a fun 2021.
Sure.
So, is it the Zenith yours or yours?
So that Zenith is mine, sir.
Let's hear about it.
So this is the Zenith Chronomaster re-edition. This one from the 70s, in just like, Zenith has done so many good watches this year. Another watch is the Zenith Defy Ultraviolet, which I think is really, really close to this. The only reason why this one gets the edge is because it is such a really nice reimagining of a piece that they've made, and it gives you that nice 70s, 80s vintage feel of a Zenith, just how the case is beveled, how everything is put together. Size-wise, I think it's a little bit under 39. I think it's 38.5 if I'm correct. And this is like what I'm looking for from a brand like Zenith. They have such a rich catalog of great watches, their movements have been placed in such great things, and I think, they're a little bit lost in the fray of so many things right now, but when they make a piece like this, it just makes you want to own this watch because it's so unique. You're not going to see anything like this that's being made today. That's not a vintage watch that you're going to have to get serviced by somebody special, and it's just a real clean, classic, but modern Zenith, and this to me is one of their best entry of the year, for sure.
I think, Zenith has a lot of heritage to the brand. There's a lot of technical know-how, the in-house movements, specifically the El Primero movements. And I think that you described it really well. It's a brand that is really looking to reshape its identity, and this watch was a great watch to do it with. So one more watch that I think for me was one of the best new releases of the year. I know you mentioned the Submariner. Again, another Rolex. But,
we're junkies.
It's the new Oyster Perpetual. So here we have the new Oyster Perpetual 41 millimeter with the turquoise blue dial. And again, these watches were a knockout. And every year we're like, what are they going to come out with? What are they going to come out with? And it's like, they may just change the dial. And and every year they do just change the dial. And you're like, oh God, they're geniuses. And it's amazing that they've managed to take what was
an entry-level watch.
An entry-level watch, the entry watch into the brand, and reshape the entire line. I mean, A, they're impossible to get. B, the colors are diverse and super cool. The watch itself pops on the wrist. And they took everything that's popular about the time, pastel colors, bright colors on watches, not just having a dark blue, a black dial, and a silver dial. And they've managed to do it in a way that almost feels like it's always been there. and never went away. From the
Because
Stella
again,
dials
it's
of the
classic.
past.
It is part of their history. I mean, they did do colored dials back in the day, but traditionally Rolex held those colored dials for gold.
I need one of these.
You know, there was always that selection of funky dials, but only in their very expensive pieces. If you got a Glacier Blue, it was only platinum. If you got the Stella dials, they were only available in the gold pieces back in the day. And for to have them come out with the coolest colors they've ever done in their entry-level, least expensive piece was amazing.
They
And
need to
especially
stop,
in this year.
because they've now made every single line that good. So there's nothing.
So we just take next year off?
Yeah. So I mean,